What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. We're here with day number 4 of Grand Party, and this is where it gets down to the wire. This is where, things get really serious, and especially moving into the final day. This is the do or die, of course, because, the less wins you get, the less rewards you're going to get overall, and the fact that they scale the rewards in such a way is just such a pain, and it makes Grand Party that much more stressful than what it already is. And I talked about it in a couple of Discord servers and such, but it would be nice if we had, the ability to carry over losses or something like that into the final day or something like that, due to the fact that it just becomes super stressful. And I think it'd be okay, hypothetically, if you went perfect victory, you get 15 out of 15, then you get the exclusive title. But locking all of those rainbow gems behind the 15 wins, I think, is just kind of a terrible idea. But I digress. Let's actually talk about the match at hand. I actually got a little bit lucky with this first match here because, the first teams that I encountered were all high-level 8-man teams of Dex, side teams, and stuff like that. It was just not looking like a good time. I risked it with the refresh, and we found this team here where the first team is almost an autofill team with a bunch of Sugofest exclusives with no synergy. It was a pretty lucky find. I ended up using Super Tandem Luffy as our leader with our fighter team here to take on that. And then we do see that it was a quick team as the second team. And I know if I'm building a Dex team, I should be able to comfortably beat most quick teams out there. So by doing that, we were able to get a pretty swift victory on match number 1, which is great. And a thing was as well is that I headed into this day with full teams of 8, essentially, from the previous day. So I was hoping to kind of reduce my cost if I was able to do that, just to try and find teams that are a little bit more accessible, teams that are a little easier to beat. And we were able to do that here, where we could run a 5-man fighter team and then a 5-man Dex team, and then using a little pig as our final team, just to reduce our cost overall. I don't think it really matters at the end of the day, because even though I was able to reduce my combat power and the cost of my teams, I was still able to find pretty high-powered teams. So I really don't understand how the location of opposing teams actually works. I don't know how they generate those lists for us now, due to the fact that the low combat power strat is now essentially deleted from the game, so we'll have to wait and see. I'll leave you guys with the rest of this clip versus this quick team, and we'll pick things up in match number 2. Match number 2, I didn't get as lucky in terms of locating opposing squads. This is where things get a little tricky. I was just going to try and get a consistent team, right? Going back to the old ways we like to do it, using Goldie Roger as our leader, running a Dex team as our first team to tank as much damage as possible, and then we can go ahead and use Roger's bursts against some of the opposing squads on matches 2 and 3. And we're able to do that here. So luckily, we found a team that did have a quick team to start off with, which is great. At this point onwards, the second and third teams are now hidden. So, trying to locate teams that you can actually beat, that you can take on, is way more difficult. And also trying to ensure that you use the right teams against the right opponents it's very difficult. I don't like the fact that they hide teams from us. I think that if they wanted to do it, they probably could do it, but maybe not hiding all the characters, just even a handful of them, right, would be nice. Even if it was just the bench, or if it was like a handful of units on the front line, where you could at least see maybe just the first unit of the unit of the front line would be nice, even though people would be able to debate their teams, you know. Like you see here, this team that I'm coming up against is a quick team, but they still had Goldie Roger as the first unit on the team, because they wanted to use Roger's leader skill. And that's the exact same thing that I did with this team, where I run a Dex team on the front, and then I had Roger on the bench just to ensure that I was able to use his leader skill, because his leader skill is good, but it's the burst skill really that is the game changer, really. And I also discussed this, I might have discussed this yesterday, but the fact that Roger's burst skill can be activated twice is massive, and I think it's honestly way too overpowered to be able to be activated twice. I think they probably should have changed it so it was only a one-time activation, especially when you're up against an AI that has Roger, and the way that they use the Roger burst, it's kind of difficult to deal with. You'll see in the second game of this match, we are up against another odd team, and they're able to use Roger twice in the same battle, and that's literally the reason why I lost. Luckily, we're able to pick things up in the third battle once we get to it, but, you know, just talking more about the game at hand here, you know, up against a quick team, shouldn't really have too many issues against this quick squad. One thing that I kind of did notice, though, is that the Pirate Rumble Rare Recruit Whitebeard, really good unit, by the way, but most of the characters you're going to be using on a Dex team, or not most of them, but a lot of the hard-hitting units can be Powerhouse, and the Whitebeard character can actually special bind Powerhouse characters, so that is something you do need to keep in mind. Moving into the second game of this match, it was obviously hidden, so I didn't know what the opponent had. So I opted to go with a Psy team second, and then I was going to save the Roger burst on my Slasher team for the last one here. So we see that it is a strength team, and I felt somewhat confident heading into this game. One thing that I was kind of afraid of was the fact that the final unit on this guy's team was Pirate Rumble Rare Recruit King. That unit is a huge problem, obviously, that huge damage through defense, and I was really, really scared of him. So I was hoping to just kind of swiftly get through this game. You see that I am just looking at the opponent's team, trying to wait and use my Roger burst at the right time. I wanted to use it right before the opponents launched damage against us, or before I was able to launch damage against them. And by this time, the opponent's Roger burst is now gone, but even just through normal attacks alone, they were able to do a really sizable chunk of damage to our character's HP, which for a Psy team, like, that's actually a lot, considering they've got relatively good bulk, like, not the best bulk out there, but it's decent enough. So that was a lot of damage the opponent did, and look, after one Yamato special, they get Roger Burst back, and they launch it again. So, back-to-back Roger Bursts, so essentially having up to 40 seconds of a game where you have half stats on all your mainline characters is a big problem. And you see, I'm doing reasonably well, all things considered, but things get a little dicey now, where 3 characters get KO'd from Pirate Rumble Rare Recruit Law Special. We see King makes his appearance into the game now, and things get a little dicey. I was hoping to potentially get some good damage here from Gaban, but he actually didn't do as much damage as I was hoping. He wasn't even inflicted with the half stats either, because he came in after the fact. I do have the Roger Burst ready to go, but I felt like it was a much safer way to get through the next game, was to save the Roger Burst for the final match. And, you know, if we win the game without having to use it, that's awesome, but using it now, and then if you still lose, like, it wasn't in my favor to use the second burst here. So I was going to save it for the final game, and I am glad I was doing that, because without that Roger Burst for the final game, I think I would have definitely lost this match, no doubt. So heading into the final game using a Slasher team is pretty risky, because you obviously don't know what you're coming up against, and then when I saw it was a Dex team, I thought for sure there was no way I was going to be able to win this one. But we're going to grind this one out and see how things go. Now, I was contemplating putting Cracker on the team instead of Doflamingo, but in hindsight, I'm actually really happy that I put Doflamingo. The extra bulk that he provided allowed us to tank even more hits from the opposing squads, and it was just a really good call from me, honestly. I'm really glad that I put Dofi instead of Cracker for increased CT. So I'm just waiting for us to launch a relatively good special. I'm not going to use Roger's Burst for a Kizaru special. He launches his special so often, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm more looking at Odin, K-Dad, and also Roger and Whitebeard, making sure to use my burst right before they were able to launch, and it just makes them hit even harder than what they normally do. So we got a lucky chance here because Odin comes up right after we use Roger, does really good damage, and automatically activates the revive proc of Luffy's Pirate Rumble ability. Roger and Whitebeard launch straight after it and get a double knockout, knocking out Pell and Dogstorm. Lucci is kind of scary because he does do defense down before he does his damage, so he could be a problem for our squad in terms of just killing us before we can actually do damage to them. So luckily they are inflicted with the half stat, so they don't do as much damage as normal. And then here we have the K-Dead coming through, and they do a lot of damage to them, knocking out the Lucci, almost knocking out the Luffy as well, which would have been a huge asset. We do see here that the Cat Viper, not much HP left. Doflamingo knocks out the Cat Viper, and now it's an 8v4. I mean, technically it's a 6v4 because two of my characters are just fluff units that are here to fill out the squad, so it's not really that big of a deal. But you see that Luffy's still not doing that much damage, but because Luffy is below 50%, he does fully charge the Sober Mask special that came in off the bench. So that is kind of scary because he is not inflicted with half stats, and it doesn't really matter at this point though, because there's only 3 characters left. They have low HP. We actually have still decent bulk. Like, Doflamingo is providing a lot of defensive effects to our squad, which I'm really happy about. And from this point on, I just knew for sure that there was no way that we could lose this game. So it was really risky, you know, using the Slasher team to come up against the Dex team, but I'm really happy that we're able to squeak out a win. Moving on to the final match of the day, and we're using the exact same team. I didn't change anything around because I saw a very, very similar squad. So we see it is a quick team coming up first, and then 2 mystery teams. So I thought, you know, why not just use the same squad where we start off with a Dex team. We've got Roger as our leader, just see if we can squeak out a win, which we do comfortably, of course, because we're a Dex team versus a quick team. I will say that the way that this quick team goes about doing things is very frustrating. You have a character like Uta, 6++ Uta, which has an ability that can haste some of your quick units, and then you have Final Tap Luffy, who also does really good damage, by the way, but also can haste another quick unit. And then they've got Magellan on the bench, which can also haste quick units. So you get in a really weird spot where they start launching all of these specials and doing all of these normal attacks over and over again. But what it actually does is that it puts all of your characters down the bottom of the order over and over again, which means that, you know, your characters are going to be ready to go, you have all your specials ready to proc, but you're sitting there waiting for them to launch because they keep hasting themselves back to the top of the order, which is a really good way to kind of time out the opponent. So I don't know if that was the strategy of this individual in particular, but if it was, I think it's actually a pretty smart way to go about it. But of course, we've got Doflamingo on the main line, and this is one of the good reasons why I think that Doflamingo should be a mainline unit, at least if you're running it in Grand Party in particular, because, you know, you can get down to the wire and none of your characters are dead. You can't get Doflamingo in, and he is one of the best late game units ever, being able to do so much damage. And because I'm already starting off at a unit deficit comparing the 2 squads, I wanted to actually make sure that I could get some knockouts. I will say though that 6+ Teach is a huge asset to Grand Party teams. The health cut, the defense down, the fixed damage. He's just one of the reasons why Dex teams are able to win comfortably in Grand Party. And, you know, obviously at the moment, not too many people are using Teach in their Dex teams, and I really hope that it continues to stay that way, actually, because if you come up against opposing Dex teams with Teach, it definitely makes things a lot harder. Anyways, you can pretty much see how this is going to go. We're going to go pretty much down to the wire here, and I was hoping to use Doflamingo's special once 30 seconds has gone, like once it gets down to the final 30 seconds of the game. I saw that Doflamingo was coming up, there's still 11 seconds left, and I thought, I don't know, this is probably not going to work too well, but due to all of the hastes of the opponent, it actually times us out a little bit further, and it means that Doflamingo can launch his special in the final 30 seconds, which actually leads us to a pretty swift victory there. That's pretty awesome. But then, of course, we do have the Roger Burst not activated yet. The opponent actually didn't do that much damage to us at all during this game, so we are heading into match number 2, or game 2 of match 3, without the Roger Burst. So it was a little concerning, I will admit, but of course we are using Final Tap Luffy on the opponent's side as their leader. and the only way that he charges his burst skill is if he knocks out our units. So the fact that he didn't knock out a single unit, he is not going to get his burst unless if he fully deals with all of the units on our next team. So I feel pretty confident heading into this game. The fact that it's not a Roger leader, Roger leader would definitely make things a little bit more wonky. But we are going to be using our side team next because the burst wasn't ready, and I didn't feel comfortable heading into the match with a slasher team without that burst ready to go. But we are up against a Dex team once again, so it's going to be our side team versus the opponent's Dex team. And it is a pretty good looking Dex team, I will admit. So this is going to be a little bit of a scary one for sure, because of the insane bulkiness that Dex have. It is going to be a problem. However, one thing that we do have is we do have Roger's burst, so eventually when we get it, that's going to enable us to do even more damage towards them, because it kind of negates their defensive effects that they have, being able to halve their stats. But luckily, a character such as Yamato that's on our Psy squad can inflict halved stats naturally, and she does really good damage there towards the opponent. Obviously, good synergy across the board here with Odin as well. And Odin, I checked to see if I got some action bind. Both Kid and Luffy got inflicted with action bind. The 4,000 fixed damage coming in from the Kuzan, and then we get the Yamato coming in, which inflicted half stats to Dofi and Kid, and it actually targeted Dofi and Kid with the damage, which is not very common. Usually the half stats and the damage from Yamato are like two separate groups of characters, so I was really glad to see that was the case. But from this point onwards, we almost get our Roger burst, we get the burst, we use the burst, and then we just straight up win because of that. So it was a little close towards the end. Our characters actually lost a little bit of HP. Even if we did lose, we had another burst with the slasher team towards the end, and I think it was revealed at the end as well. I believe the final team was either a free spirit team or it was going to be a strength team, because their first character was actually Luffy Crew, so that's kind of cool. Anyways, we move into day 5 with a full set of wins. Hopefully we can secure the 15th victory. That is going to wrap it up for me. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post on my channel, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. I'm that, guys. I'll see you guys within the next video.
我の国を開国せよ。